All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our last live chat of 2021. Just gotta do our normal check, make sure everything is operating correctly. Looks like it. Make sure I muted everything. There we go. All right, so we have a lot to talk about. Of course, as predicted, people running around saying winter canceled, no winter, blah 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 blah. We'll talk about all of that. This pattern that we're in that we start off with um, for the end of December. Start off cold, it's transitioned to warm, um, mostly because of what is evolving here in this pattern. So I want to walk through what I'm seeing right now, what is setting up in the pattern, what's potentially going on going forward for us, and then I'm going to take your questions. And there's a lot to kind of go over, so let's dive into it, I guess. So first, let me pull up this map here. This is what's happening right now. And we have, as you can see, there's snow in the background here. Very cool imagery. We have our low pressure system stationary front. To the south is a continental tropical air mass. Over us right now is a polar Pacific modified air mass. And then up here is your Arctic air mass. The difference between this pattern being a snow producer and what we're experiencing right now is simply timing. That's it. That is literally it. Okay? As I warned, the pattern would be in place, but whether or not the timing would be right to support winter storms this time around was always in question and still remains in question, which is typical for a La Nina pattern. This is a Miller B low pressure system developing around Oklahoma, charging its way towards the mid-Atlantic coast type of scenario here. So when we take a look at the wind pattern here, there's our displaced La Nina influence. Here's our active polar jet stream. Here's our short waves marching through with a nice jet streak here. Our severe weather has been very impressive in the lower Tennessee River Valley and the Mississippi River Valley as forecasted back in October. That all worked out, unfortunately, especially for those in Tennessee. It's been nasty. And we've had ice and snow over New England and parts of the interior and rain around here. I am walking you through this to just. Unfortunately, there have been some who have, let's say, poisoned the well, so to speak, talking about 95, 96 and all this other stuff. The reason why I did not, as a forecaster, use the analog of 95, 96 when discussing this weather pattern is that you guys have to understand 95, 96 is equivalent to a baseball no-hitter. Basically everything. I mean, everything with that pattern went right. And even in that scenario, you still had warm-ups where you had temperatures jumping up in the 60s and massive flooding. So I'm trying to give you guys a better understanding of what this pattern is. I might have failed in that pursuit. As that was my attempt to say, okay, this is what can happen. Okay, we have these warm-ups, we have these cool downs, we have the potential for storms. But I didn't want to make it seem like as if there would be no winter, and I didn't want to make it seem like as if it's going to be a parade of winter storms. So if that's what you thought, let me explain this. That's not what's going to happen. We will have periods where we will have winter storms, a series of winter storms, and then we'll go back to a warm-up again. It all depends on how the interaction between these troughs play out. Right now, the trough over the western United States is a little bit too strong, a little bit too deep. So as a result, your storm track ends up such that it separates the polar jet stream from the subtropical jet stream. So you end up with something like this. where all of your polar and Arctic air is trapped up here, all your really warm air is trapped down here, and your storm track is basically right over the northern Mid-Atlantic. But, as you can see, our thermal gradient is a little bit further north because our surface low pressure systems, the primary low pressure systems, are further north and west. Can this change? Absolutely. And the way it's going to change is not via tropical forcing. And I'll get to everyone's questions in just a moment. I just want to walk through everything. Okay, low stack. I don't know. All right. Well, I will check up on that. I'm not seeing anything. I don't know. I don't have anything running. All right. I'll check it out after the chat. Where was I? Oh, right. Uh, the tropical forcing, nothing's changed with that. We have an east-based La Nina. Same SOI. Same development in tropical forcing in terms of convection. We'll take a look at this. Not much change. Our MJO slowly, as I've been saying, slowly moving through phase 7, heading towards phase 8. None of that has changed. So, and we still have our very strong transport of air coming in from the troposphere, the mid-latitudes, into the stratosphere. So, we could see that continuing in the forecast on the European. And as a result, a weakening of our polar vortex gradually. So, what are we looking at here? In my opinion, we are at a crossroads. That crossroad is simply coming down to this. How does the polar vortex get disrupted? I think at this point I'm throwing out any potential for a split polar vortex. I don't think that's a reasonable solution based on all the observations. I like a stretched polar vortex. I like a colder scenario taking place as we move through January and February. I don't see anything sustained. I don't see any support for a historic negative NAO pattern. But I do see a negative NAO pattern. I see a pattern where we're going to see our winter storms. But if you come across people who might be saying it still can be a blockbuster winter or something of that nature, I just don't see it in the data. I mean, things could change. The one thing I always tell you about a polar vortex forecast is that it's very new science in terms of understanding all the factors that can impact it. And so as a result, we could end up with a surprise. I'm not going to dispute that things can rapidly change. But based on everything I'm seeing now, I like the going forecast that I have had, which is your best chance for above normal snowfall is going to be in New England and the Catskills and the Poconos. Your best chance for just a mess of wintry mix in the I-95 corridor, and a lot of rainfall along the southern New Jersey coast. And unless I see significant sustained high latitude blocking where we get a strong negative NAO and basically a ridge locked in around the St. Lawrence River Valley to drive all that cold air southward, I don't see region-wide above normal snowfall out of this winter. I see stormy, I see active, I see volatile, especially with the temperatures. I mean, we're going to talk about Sunday in just a second. But I don't see sustained, major, heavy historic snowfall. That would be 95, 96. And I'm repeating that because I'm seeing it all over social media. I'm seeing it on the forums and on Twitter, and I want to kill it because it ain't happening, guys. Believe me, if it was going to happen, I would be saying it because let's be honest here. The more snow, the more money. You know what I'm saying? So if I was seeing that, I would say it. But this pattern ain't it. Okay? And it's not it because 9596 had a strongly disrupted polar vortex and a near split. I'm not seeing that this time. Could that change again? Yes, but I'm not seeing the data for that. What I am seeing though is a very, very stormy pattern setting up for this upcoming weekend. And after I walk through this, I am going to answer your questions and go over everything. So I want to bring up this weekend. Let's see here. Okay, so this is Saturday into Sunday. This jet streak I'm watching out for on Sunday, I'm keeping a very careful eye on, as there's a potential here for this weekend for some strong southwesterly winds, some wind gusts over 30 miles per hour, possibly touching 50 miles per hour. We'll have to watch the passage of this cold front because Sunday night and Monday, there's still plenty of moisture here. And there's a lot of mixing down. And take a look at what's happening at your surface temperatures during this time period. Again, this is Sunday night into Monday morning. So we'll jump to 90 hours. We loaded a little bit faster last time, of course. So here's Saturday. As you can see, it gets pretty warm. The mild guys backed off a little bit on some of these high temperatures. They were going into the 60s. Now isn't as much mixing. But here we are on Sunday. Look at that. Very warm, right? So you're looking at lower to mid 60s in the Philadelphia metro Sunday afternoon, talking about around 4 p.m. Then by the time we get to 7 p.m., look at these temperatures starting to free fall over northeastern Pennsylvania. And Sunday night into Monday, we're looking at anywhere between a 25 to 35 degree drop in temperatures. Now you might be wondering why would that matter to me? Well, because when we take a look at the low level moisture, I'm going to pull up 850 millibar relative humidity, which I'm going to have to pull up here. We'll pull up 850 millibar relative humidity for the time period, and we still have plenty of lingering moisture during this time period. So what I'm concerned about during this time period is the potential for some black ice, some lingering snow showers, and some really slippery conditions, especially around the Poconos, Catskills, and then into northwestern New Jersey. And that's starting to show up in the guidance here. On the GFS and on the European. Let's see if I can zoom in on this. Let's see, around New England. So, Sunday night into Monday, look for temperatures to crash and look for the potential for some light rain snow mixing over to snow before ending. So definitely some slick roadways. This weekend's going to be very warm. The New Year's Eve celebration, dry, comfortable. You're going to go out. Personally, we're going to stay in, stay away from crowds, all that crazy stuff. We do anyway. It has nothing to do with the pandemic or any of that stuff. We just don't like large crowds, right, babe? So we're just going to stay in, chill, watch CNN, and those knuckleheads get drunk or whatever the heck they do every year. And yeah, pretty much. And overall, it's going to be pretty nice. But the first weekend of the new year is going to be a heck of a roller coaster with temperatures jumping up into the 50s and 60s and then crashing into the 20s and 30s by the time we get to Monday morning with that potential for snowfall. So certainly some very interesting stuff. Then we are watching later on in the forecast period, towards the end of the forecast period, a storm trying to develop here. Now, let me show you what is popping up for the weekend around the 8th of January. And again, I wouldn't trust the details, so to speak, but let's understand the overall phenomenon that's developing here. The model guidance is producing this storm because you get a greater interaction between the subtropical jet stream and the polar jet stream. So you have the introduction of cold air, nice convergence and confluence here to support cold air draining ahead of this disturbance, and warm air transport out ahead of it. So there's your moisture feed. A strong lifting, strong short wave. This could transition into more of a Miller B type system, but right now I'm going to hold off on that and just go with like a Clipper type storm here. But what this would support is the potential for snow changing over to a wintry mix and rain along the coast, but a real good maybe 4 to 8, 3 to 6 inch type snowfall type event for the Poconos, the Catskills, northwestern New Jersey, Hudson River Valley, and interior Connecticut, essentially the Hudson Highlands. This doesn't look like a significant storm for the coastal plain, but it'll probably be the first real accumulating snowfall over 2 inches for the Philadelphia and New York City metro if this lined up. If this ends up further south, we could be talking about more. If this is displaced a little bit more, then it's a non-event. So we're going to be watching that as well. But the main story that I want to impart is that this winter is far from done. This is not winter canceled or boring winter. It's just back off from the high expectations and understand that we're still in a step down process, that we've been evolving towards this point through December, and January and February still has a lot of promise, just not historic. Okay? So with that, let me take some of your questions and I'll go back to YouTube and we'll go from there. So as always, good evening everyone. And let's see here. Evening Chris, evening Card. Is that high pressure wave break sitting south of the Aleutians also contributing to the lack of timing and also instability of troughs to dig deep enough in the east? It's part of the issue. The ability for the troughs to dig in the east is more aligned with the southeast ridge around the Bahamas than anything going on around Alaska. But the wave break around the Aleutians is leading to a basically mistiming of the polar jet stream with the subtropical jet stream, which we could see really nicely here. Okay, you notice the short waves are just a little bit off, just a tiny bit off, and that little slight adjustment in these short waves is why we're not seeing cold air moving in ahead of the storms, but instead behind them. It seems we would really need low pressure where the big high pressure is sitting. That would definitely be a change. Now, I'm seeing an indication of that, and let me pull that up here. Towards the end of this forecast period. 1 second. Okay. Towards the end of this forecast period, we start seeing that trend. And we also see it in the ensemble guidance, where we start to get rid of that powerful ridge where we have here, and we transition it to a trough starting to set up to the south of the Aleutians. Now, if this takes place, then that would mean that we have a fundamental change in the pattern. But I want to kind of see it set up before I trust it, like i.e. I want to get it under 7 days. But if this happens, then what would happen is that your trough in the west would weaken. Dare I say you might even end up with a slight ridge here. And you allowed the support for a trough around an axis. I think this might be a little overdone. I would say the trough axis is more like around here, especially with this ridge being a real thorn, with La Nina still being an issue here. So I like this trough being a little bit sharper. This is probably a little bit deeper, a little bit further south. But the transition would mean that the cold air that's all welled up here in Alaska would drain south towards the plains and then towards the east coast. But you would need to see this trough start to set up here. So what I want to do is I want to see this solution show up in 120 hours. Okay? If we start seeing it go falling below day 7, I'd have a lot more confidence in it. 9596 definitely did not have that big high pressure break south of the illusions. No, it did not. It had that. It had this. It had it all winter. And what it did is that it forced a huge ridge here in the polar jet stream, and that basically crushed the southeast ridge. So you had your ridge here, but it was suppressed. So the ridge over the west, because they're strung up a level low, basically suppressed the La Nina influence. And that was driven more by the stratospheric evolution than anything in tropical forcing. China just had a huge cold snap. If the polar vortex gets disrupted by cold air goes there, the analysis could be on money as what happens, but placement is off for snow here. In a way, yeah, I did warn that was a threat. I don't think that's going to be an issue because of how I'm seeing the polar vortex stretched here. I'm seeing it stretched more towards North America. And if you want to look at the GFS version, we'll use 12Z. And you can see that same stretching going on here. Just have to wait for it to load. There it is. So when I'm seeing this signature, it tells me that the cold air is going to drain into North America. I just don't trust the details just yet. 18Z GFS has 18Z GFS special Monday, January 3rd. Yeah, I saw it. It's rather interesting. You know what? I got an idea. Let's take a look at I know what the surface shows. Let's take a look at 850. Let's look at the 500 millibar relative vorticity. Okay, relative vorticity is lifting on a plane, okay, on one stationary plane. Vertical velocity is the measure of velocity from the surface on up. Okay, so it's a vertical measurement. So we're going to look at the horizontal measurement, all right? And right around this time period, let's see how it sets it up. Okay, so the GFS, what it does is that it severely enhances the shortwave in the subtropical jet stream. Is it possible? Yeah, it's possible, but it's on shaky ground. Then it tries to interact, not fully phased, but interact with the polar jet stream. And that whole process will likely enhance cyclogenesis if this was to happen. But this is really, really enhanced. I mean, way over. It's nearly closing it off. So that's questionable just from the start. And I bet because it does that, it causes a cold pool at 850 millibars. Let's check that out. And see, this is why you look at more than just the surface on the GFS or even the European or any guidance. Let's see here. Yeah, see? Look at that enhancement. So it stays playing cold enough. And so as a result, let's zoom in if we can on the evolution of this. There it is. Okay, so because of the strong PVA, it causes a 985 millibar low pressure system, which would, if you get that type of low pressure system, it causes an expansion of the precipitation shield. It slows down with dry air transport, but at the same time pulls cold air in towards the coast. So you have your surface temperatures falling towards freezing. So then you end up with this band of moderate snowfall Sunday night into Monday. The difference between this and the European guidance is that the European guidance does not over enhance the shortwave, and so it doesn't produce its explosive cyclogenesis, and therefore doesn't build back the precipitation shield, whereas the 18Z GFS does. I'd be less inclined to trust the 18Z GFS because typically when you have these strong cold air transport scenarios, you typically do not have a strong cyclogenesis event taking place. And you typically do not have a strong subtropical, a shortwave in the subtropical jet stream becoming over enhanced. So that's why I wouldn't trust that all that much. But we'll keep an eye on it. Per Earth News School, still a good feed of warmth from the tropics through polar regions at 10 millibars and 70 millibars. Yeah, that remains in place. And we could also see that not only in Earth News School, but right here on this chart. None of that has changed at all. Saw there were finally 2 solar flares yesterday. They were weak. The material energy didn't leave the sun's atmosphere. Yeah, this output from the sun is not very impressive for an active period. I could say that. Matthew Myers asks, is there any indication of stratospheric warming event? Doesn't all this warm air have to go somewhere? We are seeing bursts. Let me show you. Let's see here. Is this? Yeah, here it is. Okay, so we're seeing another event try to push through, and right now, the best way I would describe the warming events is more like a blowtorch, or when you're heating up a hot air balloon. It blows and then it stops, right? We aren't seeing that whole expansive stratospheric warming event yet where it warms the entire higher latitudes of the stratosphere at 10 millibars. We're seeing that at 70 millibars. We're seeing some spikes, but we're not seeing anything sustained, much like we're not seeing the cold air sustained. So basically, the best way to explain it in boxing terms is that the warm air transport is basically jabbing at the polar vortex, but we haven't seen any knockout punches yet. Just a lot of quick jabs. This GFS was showing possible split of PV at the end of the run. Possible, but I want to kind of see better observational support. I would want to see this right here to just set up a massive warming first. If I saw that, if I can gain that and see just total massive warming, kind of like what you're seeing down here, but up here, if I could see that observed, then I'd be a lot more comfortable with a split. Current winds at the stratospheric level per new schools seem to stretch towards North America also. Yes, they do. I assume that the 18Z GFS result was due to unusual convective feedback issues that run usually has. There are definitely indications of that. Probably error with severe weather activity. What happened with the MJO? Do you expect it to move into phase 7 and 8? The MJO is in phase 7. Let me pull it up here. Here we are. It's been in phase 7. That's how we've been getting our cold shots. And it's slowly pushing towards phase 8. Very, very slowly. But it's getting there. It's kind of like moving like as if this stuff is molasses. But it is expected to get there eventually. And I expect it to linger in phase 8 for a little bit before going into a neutral state. Let's check out to see if there's anything going on YouTube here. Oh boy, there is a ton. Let's see here. Jimmy asks, is there a chance for January 3rd storm in the Mid-Atlantic interior? I like the idea on the morning of January 3rd of a wintry mix going over to snow. I don't see a lot of snow accumulation out of that, but I definitely see a wintry mix threat. I'm going to work on the sound. I'm not sure why they're static. What are your thoughts about the Pna Trending Positive? The MJO forecast hasn't looked impressive as lately to support a decent shift to phase 8. Typically in La Ninas, I want to see a upper level low setup um, to the south of the Aleutians to support a positive PNA. If I see that as shown in the 10-day forecast on the European, the GFS, and the ensembles, then I gain more confidence in the idea of a positive PNA, but not a strong one. I remain open to the idea of it, but I need to see more data to support it. The winter is starting like so many recent winters where storms, cold rumors of storms are always 7 to 10 days away. What convinces you that this winter won't end up being just a snow disappointment? I've been warning since October, don't trust any storm output beyond 5 days or 7 days. I warned, I warned several times that there were going to be a lot of phantom storms in the 10-day and on the GFS to 15-day forecast. I warned that was going to happen because typically what happens with these type of winter setups, especially with weak La Nina patterns, there's so much noise out there that the models put out a lot of phantom storms. What I am seeing is basically what I've been forecasting, which is the cold air comes in, it's transient, you have your chance for storms, your best chances for the interior, a lot of wintry mix, changing over to rain type scenarios on the coast. I'm not seeing anything that back me away from that. And I still see the support for some snowier patterns. Um, so to say that this winter is a dud or anything like that would basically, I want to be careful here. I'm not saying you misread the forecast. I'm saying that maybe your expectations were a little high based on what I was saying. But this winter is pretty much evolving as expected. A little bit slower on the MJO. I thought the MJO might be a little bit faster by a week or so. But other than that, I'm kind of not surprised with what I've been seeing so far. Let's see, PTR Flex X's. So are you saying the polar vortex will weaken? Yes. Is it just a matter of how? It's a matter of how fast and how it gets stretched. There is a theory out there by Mr. Judah Cohen. If you read his blog, it's free. It's great stuff. Where I kind of see where he's saying is that there's kind of like a split in the road of how this plays out. Uh, Typically, when you have a stretched polar vortex, eventually you get a rebound, and that leads to a strong polar vortex. But I'm thinking that's going to happen more towards late February into March rather than January, based on the timing and evolution of this whole process, which would pretty much fall into the idea that I had with an early spring around March. But there is the potential that the stretching doesn't last long enough and it kind of snaps back like a rubber band. And in that case, you end up with a mild February. All signs point to a colder January. Then there's a question of what happens after that. Do we prolong that, or do we snap back and we go into the strong polar vortex, stronger than what we see now, and it basically locks up all the cold air in northern Canada? So that's kind of like the fork in the road that we're in. Any chance for a second wave accumulating snow Monday? I don't know how much. I'm going to wait and see and gain more data. I'm not looking for a lot here. Maybe 1-2 inches, maybe 3 inches at most for higher elevations. But I'll wait and see. I'll work on that data. Can you take a look at 500 millibar GEF ensembles starting near the 7th? They have enough of slightly positive Pna to disrupt the trough. So let's check out the GFS ensembles. Here we go. And while we wait for that to load, I shall drink some water. Let's see what we got here. Okay. So here's trying, it produces a trough a different way. Than the European guidance. There's trying to push that ridge. So it displaced the ridge a little bit further to the east. Enough so that you get this weak ridge right along the west coast. And you get a trough axis around here. This isn't too bad. If this is pumped up like this is going to be further south. This would not be a negative NAO pattern, though. This would be a probably neutral NAO. You have to watch out for cold air masses to come in here, but it'd still be transient because you don't have that block. But you get rid of the ridge here and you push it further east on the GFS ensemble guidance. Let's see what the 12Z does. 12Zs are usually a little bit more reliable. So there's the 0Z. There's the 0 hour. There's the observation. 10 days out. Okay. It's a little bit different than the European still. It's taking that ridge and it's pushing it further east. Yeah. I'm not seeing a huge change in the GFS ensemble guidance. The European guidance has a more fundamental change in the GFS ensembles guidance. But it tries to end up going in the same place, which is interesting. Because it tries to force this polar vortex to drift further south, and you try to produce this trough here. It does pick up the La Nina a little bit better, which is that it builds up the heights here. And you definitely lose the deep trough in the west. You kind of have this kind of weak ridge here right along the west coast with a trough moving into the northern plains. So you can definitely see your cold air coming in and bleeding in eastward. But this isn't a major winter storm pattern. Definitely a colder pattern than what we have now. Doesn't the polar vortex getting displaced towards the east coast? I see models showing that. Would it take a few weeks to feel the effects? Possibly shake up the pattern? This assumes it happens. It kind of depends on how the displacement takes place and what the reflective properties are. But usually when I start seeing this start to take place, I start seeing the results in the troposphere about 7 to 10 days later. So we're starting that process now. So that's why a lot of people are pinpointing mid-January. Do you think there'll be a big snowstorm mid-January, February in the I-95 corridor? No idea. It's possible. The threat's certainly there, but I don't know specifically. All right, back here. Keep on asking some of these questions here. We're doing really good here tonight, guys. Let's see here. Back to James Davidson. What happened? Okay, we did the MJO thing. It's moving just finished Christmas dinner, had too much wine. Yes. Or perhaps too much grape juice or sparkling grape juice. Card Access has, how can anyone call winter a dud before January 1st? Believe me, I have people doing that before November 1st. It's not like we have a strong El Nino or La Nina, true, or sudden stratospheric cooling, true, from a never before observed ion, yes, like 2019. Yeah, there's plenty of potential for this winter just because you don't have a white Christmas. I'm sorry, there is. There's a reason why, guys, that there's only a 10% chance of a white Christmas, even in the most favorable patterns. Um, let's see here. Even if the stratospheric vortex rebounds, is it possible that the tropospheric vortex is decoupled at that point, and thus the impact on it is delayed? That is possible, but we need to actually see that happen before we can make that assumption. But it's certainly a possibility, yes. The last few years, it seems like winter runs from January to March, even into April, instead of December to February. Do you agree with this? And do we know the science behind it? All right, that's from Matthew Myers, and it is an interesting study. Um, December typically has been historically our lowest snowfall month. It's also our most popular Hollywood month for snow, i.e., the public thinks December is really snowy around here. In reality, it's not. It never has been. Um, Aside from if you want to go to the 1800s with George Washington, but even those, you'd had several years where you had very little snow, and most of our snowfall was in January and February. With that said, there has been an increase for late March winter storm events and even April storm events. But I'm not ready to call it a seasonal shift. March is always a funky month because you have a lot of changes going on and you have the potential for major winter storms followed by days in the 60s the day after. So March has always been one of those funky months. But around here, our snowier, colder months have always been January and February. And that has been historically true for a for as long as I've been keeping track of records, okay, for a very long time. Um, has December been warmer in general than what I've been seeing in the past? Yes, I can't say that. But has it been significantly less snowy? Not really. I mean, I can count. I never had a snow day in December in school. I grew up in Freehold, New Jersey, went to Freehold schools. If there was 2 inches of snow on the ground, you had no school, right? Never in December. Never. January and February? Yes. I I don't remember one snow day in December. All right. So it kind of gives you an idea. December is not exactly your snowiest month. Frank Walter, I am surprised by the lack of snow at the slopes. That is true. Massachusetts and Northwest Connecticut are bare. Yeah, a lot of the snow has been focused more towards the Green and White Mountains. It kind of reminds me of my favorite winter Christmas movie, White Christmas. Yeah, where the guy had no snow in Vermont, and he was like freaking out. And they were asking him where they put the snow, and they say they bring it in at night. Take it in during the day, bring it out at night. Um, yeah, it's been one of those years, but I expect that to change quite a bit moving forward. Are still expecting snowy conditions in eastern Great Lakes. It hasn't snowed that much in December. It has off the Lake Ontario and Lake Erie. Perhaps not around Ohio, um, but that's more due to wind direction than anything else. But it certainly has around western New York. I expect that to increase, by the way. Old enough to have seen winter snow listed to mid January and then a couple of storms from mid January to mid to late February. Yeah, absolutely. That could definitely happen. That could happen this year. Valley Forge was during the Little Ice Age. Yes, it was. We had a good track record of mid February storms. Even in 78, 79, the snow was January and February. Yep. Our winters typically are focused in January and February, which is why I always get a kick on social media of winter canceled in December. It's like we're doing this again, guys. Haven't do when I think that winter is a dud, like I thought so in 2019. Actually, I made the proclamation the last time I was down at my parents from North Carolina, December. What was it? December 22nd, 2019. I remember this because I got a ton of emails after I wrote it, where I saw the polar vortex, I saw it strengthening, I saw the cooling. I'm like, we're done. This turkey is cooked. Um, I have no problem admitting that when that is the case. This year, I'm not seeing that. I'm still seeing plenty of potential. Just gotta just be a little patient. That's all. Let's see. We've got more questions here. Let's see here. December has always seemed like a transition month. December and March to me are very similar in that they're typically transition months, and you typically do not want to put a lot of stock into how the rest of the season is going to set up with how December or March sets up. What does sea surface temperatures look like, not just as a whole, but Pacific and Atlantic basins? All right, let's take a look at that. I'll pull this up. And you can see we still have our negative PDO, although it's not as strong as what we're seeing in the past couple of weeks. Plenty of warm water off the East Coast and around the Gulf of Mexico. This has my eye because if we do get some Miller B storms to crank off the Delmarva Peninsula, they are going to bomb out because there is a ton of warm water here for them to feed off of. So typically what happens is that when you have a Miller B transition, you have cold air rushing towards the coast and towards the coastal waters, which creates a dramatic vertical and horizontal thermal gradient, which enhances cyclogenesis. And when you see this setup showing up, things can really get cooking. So definitely watch out for that. Other than that, we have our traditional negative PDO pattern, negative AMO signature as well. Here's our east-based La Nina. Plenty of warm water out towards the date line. Watch out for that. This is not a blob. This is a negative PDO. I saw someone mentioning this as a blob as to and call it climate change. This is a typical negative PDO signature. This is not unusual. This is not a change. This is what typically happens in the Pacific with a negative PDO pattern. And what that does is that enhances storms and supports moisture transport into Alaska, which leads to a lot of heavy snowfall up in those neck of the woods. So, not exactly a surprise, but just wanted to point that out. Let's see here. It seems like winter patterns are cylindrical. Yep, they are. Where you get several years of low impact winters and then several years of cold, snowy winters. What causes that? Patterns, man. It's the atmosphere balancing itself out. It's a matter of the evolution of El Ninos and La Ninas. It's the evolution of heat transport from the tropics to the Arctic. There's a lot of Rossby wave interactions. I could go on for hours. The atmosphere is a lot more complicated than what people take for granted. And it's not always point A equals point B. It's typically point A plus the cosine of B to the third power. Add in a bunch of others. It's a very complicated process. So you could have winters set up that are a string of very cold winters, and you could connect that to end snow periods, stratospheric evolution periods, the QBO, mountain torque, what the AAM is situated as. All those factors go into it. And sometimes they repeat themselves, and then they break down. Always seems like President's Weekend was always the time for big snowstorms. There certainly have been some big snowstorms around President's Day weekend, but two really stand out. Okay, and but usually around that time is usually a very stormy time for the northern Mid-Atlantic. Okay, we got 10 more minutes, and then we will wrap it up, and then I am going to get ready for 2022. I'm curious, what are you guys, aside from snow, I know everyone's looking forward to snow, what is everyone looking forward to for 2022? Definitely put that down in the chat. Just curious. Aside from the weather, I am very interested to see how the Chiefs do in the playoffs. And I am very interested to see when they do play baseball, which I think they will, because there's too much money to be lost to do a strike. How the Mets do. I'm very interested to see what happens with that. Hopefully they get one more pitcher. I want one more starting pitcher, but we'll see. But you guys let me know what you guys are looking forward to in 2022. 2003 was a big one, absolutely. It was an impressive one. I remember that one. Super Bowl champion Dallas Cowboys. Oh, well, I can't. Hey, look, I can't fault you for pulling for your team, but we'll see. Also, if I'm not mistaken, 2010, 2011, and 95, 96, we had warm waters off the Delmarva, those great snowy years. Excuse me. Yes, you did. You definitely did with that. New York team's not having a top 10 draft pick. Yeah, good luck on that one. Um, let's see here. I hope the Cowboys take L. Well, there you go. There's some people who love the Cowboys and some people who hate the Cowboys. It's starting to get like that with the Chiefs. I don't know why. I don't know. Like the top NFL pickers or whatever on ESPN and stuff always like say, "Oh, the Chiefs are done." I'm like, really? They're done? Have you seen the rest of the AFC West? Come on. But they're back. Let's see here. While I'm waiting for those responses, I am going to check to see if we have anything else. Questions, good. We're all caught up with that. But I am looking forward to this year featuring a lot more winter storms. I do. I do think that we're going to see that more. The Knicks do better. Yes. I'm not really much of a basketball guy. I mean, I can kind of play. I mean, I'm really good at defense, and every once in a while, I might actually hit the rim with the ball. Maybe. Um, I'm pretty good at dribbling if no one else gets in my way. You know, um, I'm a Giants fan. I'm going for the Chiefs. There you go. Hey, look, I can understand that. When I was, as a Chiefs fan in the early 2000s, I would root for the dogs in the dog bowl. I really didn't like any of the teams that played. I did pull for the Giants to beat the Patriots because my brother's a Giants fan. So I figure at least one of us should be happy, right? But he was also a Yankees fan. He always rubbed it in that the Mets stunk. So I wasn't too enthusiastic. Uh, Steve, take a look into your crystal ball and next winter setup. I'd look for a weak El Nino. I don't know what orientation. I don't know how long, but look for a weak El Nino. I will say that for next winter. Comcast starts carrying MSG Network again. That's a good one. Even though it's super early, any early thoughts on the summer pattern? Kind of connected to what I was just asked about the winter pattern for next year. We're already worried about next year. Um, I think we're going to be changing from a La Nina into El Nino. I don't know how strong, um, but if typically when I see a transition like this, it's typically a weather pattern that is featuring a lot of severe thunderstorms for us and strong cold fronts. So that's something I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on. I don't think the tropical season will be as impressive as what we've seen the past 2 years. The Sierra Nevadas are breaking records. Yes, they are. Other years where that happened, we usually saw slightly above average snowfall. Um, so what's happening is that your trough is very strong over the west, and eventually that relaxes. And so typically what that leads to is exactly what I've been talking about, where you have a better support for your negative NAO pattern to gain support while your active pattern continues. And let's see here. Is the Pacific still quiet as two tropical systems? Yep, so far. Nothing really stands out. Big Mets fan here. Definitely need one more starting pitcher. Absolutely. But I like what they've done so far, so we'll see. Thanks for your thoughts, Steve. Really value your opinion. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here. Okay, so I'm gonna wrap it up now. I want to wish all of you guys a happy New Year. I hope you guys had a great Christmas. Yeah, great Christmas, great Hanukkah. I don't know, whatever else anyone else is celebrating, whatever. Um, I hope you guys had a great month, and I'm looking forward to continuing this into 2022. And I wouldn't be able to do it without you guys. So I just want to thank you, and I hope you have a great New Year's celebration. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll be back here next Wednesday in the new year, tracking down some storms, maybe talking about some snow events. So, as always, have a wonderful day, have a wonderful night, and as always, stay safe out there.